Okay, I'm recording.
Okay. This is Dick Parker. He was born on March 19th, 1928, I believe. He served as a corporal in the Marine Corps during World War II. And this interview is taking place on December 1st, 2012 in Visalia, California. My name is Mariah Ferris. This is Shelby Zaccardi, and Nick Medden is behind the camera. This interview is being conducted as part of the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. Okay, and I can start with questions. So the first series of questions we have is mostly about your life, sort of growing up and before the war.
Okay.
So we know when you were born and everything. You said you were born in Cherokee, Iowa?
Correct.
What was it like there? Did you...
It's a Midwest town. It's just a very comfortable place to live. It was the county seat of one of the 99 counties in Iowa.
Okay.
And it was the county seat. It was very small. I think it was 6,000 people.
Okay.
But it was noted for its, they called it the bug house, but it was really insane asylum. And it was huge,
Wow.
building it. That's when they really took care of the insane people in those days.
Wow.
And it was very, very interesting. It was just a beautiful place.
Yeah.
And, you know, what more do I say? Agriculture, you know, is corn, beans, and cattle, and pigs. Those are the main items that the people lived on in Iowa, and they still do.
Okay.
Iowa, that's where the tall work goes. That's one of the...
Have you ever been back there? Or?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
sure. I have a farm back there right now.
Oh wow.
Grinnell, Iowa, which is Grinnell. There's a university called Grinnell.
That sounds familiar. Okay. And you grew up there with your parents most of your...
My father died when I was
okay.
8. I was 8 years old when he died, so I was without a father until forever. My mother never remarried. And I went to high school there, and then that's when the draft was still going. And they called me to go to Fort Snelling for a pre-induction physical, and I did, and I passed. And they said, well, we'll see you in July. And I said, how long term? They said, well, it's convenience of the government. We're not going to give you any commitment on how long you'll be there. And I said, okay. So I got back to school, and I had 3 buddies, and we said, let's dodge the draft. We'll join the Marine Corps. So we dodged the draft by joining the Marine Corps.
Okay.
Am I talking too much?
No. We'll hear everything you have to say.
And more.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about your family?
My father was a banker
Okay.
until the banker's holiday in 1932, when all the banks were forced to close, because there was no way that any bank could pay 100% of what they had on the paper. It was just not possible because of investment. So that was a bad affair. And there was also in the bank there was a robbery at the bank, and this was a big deal for a small town.
Yeah.
And they came with machine guns on top of the car, and the guy at the hotel across from the bank gave the signal for them to come in. And the janitor, who was also security, got trapped outside the bank. And he had his pistol, and then he'd go bing, 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 the machine gun, and he would die. It was a joke. But they finally caught them, and they took them to Chicago for trial, and my dad went up there and testified. This does not I, but you know, we lived that way. My mother was a PEO. I don't think that means anything to you.
I'm afraid not.
Philanthropic educational organization.
Okay.
It was established by some women who thought that they should have the ability to have a group of their own, as the boys did in college. So they formed this in Iowa. It's international now. It's
Okay. Wow.
We're still pretty big. My wife's PEO.
Okay. Wow.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have any siblings?
Yeah, my brother,
Okay.
my younger brother, Jack, he was in the State Department, and that's where he retired. He has since passed away.
Oh, okay.
And I had an older half-brother because my father's first wife died and she married my mother. And Jimmy was our oldest their oldest son. Well, was my dad's only son, and he was older than I. He joined the Marine Corps in the 1st Division.
Okay.
Went to Guadalcanal.
Okay.
And then he was a lawyer.
Okay.
Anything more?
I
About me?
Yeah.
I was a singer.
You're a singer?
Singer, yeah, in
Wow.
high school. We used to have competitions in the Midwest. I don't know where they did out here or not. But it was solo, mostly solo.
Wow.
And I sang tenor. And it's a competition. You go, maybe 18 others are singing. And I got 1st in the division.
Wow.
And I went to the state and got 1st in the state.
Wow.
And then there's a national, but I wasn't eligible for the national for the year after I got it. I got it the 1st year I went up. I went state, national, I got 1st.
Wow.
I couldn't compete the next year. I did the 3rd year and I got 1st again.
Wow.
But when I got in the Marine Corps, they didn't have too many singers.
Yeah.
So I didn't do that until I went back to university and I sang at that time.
Okay.
And you ever heard of barbershop music?
Yeah, barbershop quartets.
Okay.
They've got the hats and the canes.
Yeah, well, they sing very well. It's 4-part harmony. And I established one of those here in Visalia, and 6 in Australia.
Wow.
And you know,
After you served?
pardon me?
After you
Well,
served?
this after the service, yeah. They're asked about my life, and I thought
Yeah.
I'd throw that in.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's
Because
interesting.
it is an important part of my life.
Yeah.
Music. Plus, I played horn, trumpet, and when I was in college, I had this band, and I was the singer, and I played the trumpet. It was fascinating.
Did you ever record music?
No, they didn't. They didn't talk about things like that. At least I didn't know they did.
Yeah. So we wanted to ask about your education. I think
Okay.
you talked about it a little bit.
Sure. Well, I went to high school, and when I got back to the Marine Corps, I had a GI Bill. So I went to the University of Iowa, and I completed my bachelor's and my master's there.
What did you study?
What
Did you study? What did you get your master's in?
Well, originally I planned to go to law school, and at that time you had to take a foreign language, and I already had Latin down cold, so I thought I'd try something else, so I took German. And I found this was probably the best thing I ever did, because it came to me. Of course, foreign language came to my brother and to my mother, something in our makeup. So I ended up with a master's in German literature, and I taught that in high school and in college. And, is that enough?
Okay. Yeah, I think so. Let's see. I think we can move on at this point to one last question. So the war, the war was happening a certain amount while you were growing up, right?
Yes, yes. I started in '41, basically.
Do you remember? Did it particularly affect you in your childhood in any way that you remember?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
The mothers of the town were very worried about their sons. This was a common concern. You know, when will my boy go and will he come back? They talked pretty much about it. It was Sunday afternoon family get-togethers in the home. They would do a lot of that kind of talking. But from my point of view, I wasn't really concerned, you know, that I may have to go or not. So it's fine. It's my country. I owe it. So.
Okay.
Although I was chicken, I didn't go in the Army, I was in the Marine Corps.
That seems perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so you sort of touched on it. We wanted to ask why you wanted to enlist, but it sounds like you were drafted and then you chose to go to the Marine Corps instead.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I don't know much about the Army, so can you explain to me somewhat, you know, the difference between the draft and the Marine Corps and why?
Well, draft is a conscription type of thing. Where a Marine Corps, you volunteer. You're not conscripted into the Marine Corps. You volunteer.
Okay.
And if you volunteer, that wipes out your conscription necessary. You don't have to do both. So.
Okay.
Plus, the Marine Corps at that time said they would give how much time you'd be in, what branch you'd like to, and that you could hold them to that. So I said, I'd like to be in the aviation. They said, fine. And they said, how about 2 years? And I said, that would be just fine.
Okay.
So that's
Okay,
what happened.
great. Sounds good. Okay, and so it says you started boot camp in San Diego, is
Yes,
that right?
yes, I did.
And what was that like?
Very strenuous. It was tough.
Yeah.
It was tough, but it was good training.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for combat especially, it was good.
Yeah. When you say it was tough, is that mostly just the physical activity?
No,
there's
a lot of pressure on you. You know, the Marine Corps is very high regard of itself.
Okay.
The esprit de corps is tremendous, and a lot of it comes from boot camp.
Okay.
And the feeling you have for other Marines is very strong.
Okay. So, what did you find it was hard to adapt to that life?
It wasn't pleasant.
Yeah.
No, I didn't enjoy every minute of it. I think we had a couple of DIs who were a little sadistic, you know. But, you know, you survive.
Okay. Can you explain to us a little bit what sort of your daily life would be like? I don't know what time
Right
you woke
now?
up sorry, in the in boot camp and then in the service.
Well, boot camp at 4:30. You got out of pad at 4:30 and ran to breakfast, where you stood at attention, waiting for you to be walking to the dining area. Then you went back, and depending on what they had, you know, you might be. Almost your rifle training was done at a different base. They transferred you there for I think it was 2 weeks.
Okay.
And they call it Agony Hill because it was on a hill and you had to march up and down the hills to get, and then you'd get in these peculiar stances for shooting. And finally, after the end of your training, you had a qualification day. And if you got expert, you got $5 a month more. And so naturally, everybody tried to become an expert because $5 in those days is quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
And you got to wear a bar across there to show that you were.
Okay.
So I qualified.
Great.
You had to go back every year and do it.
Okay. Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Let's see. I guess, and then let's see. You moved for a while. You were stationed in Miramar.
Oh yeah. After I completed boots,
Uh-huh.
I went to Miramar, which was a Navy air base, and they were getting ready to close it down. So there are certain things that we could do that they didn't know how to do, so we did it. And then I went to El Toro. And at that point, they signed me to the Naval Office. Naval, the law office. Excuse me, the law office. And I worked for 6 officers there, and we handled court martials.
Okay, and what was that like?
What was that like?
Court martial.
At the time I was there were a lot of guys who wanted to get out of the Marine Corps because they thought it was tough. So they would break into somebody's locker, and then they would have a court martial. You get a BCD, a bad conduct discharge, which was not good for their future. If you have a BCD, you really shouldn't. And across the street was the headquarters 1st Marine Air Wing, and they did the general course. That was for treason, any of these murder, any of these strong, heavy things. They always tried to cross the street. We tried to cross the street on our side of the street, base legal office. We did summary courts, basically,
Okay.
which, you know, like breaking in a guy's locker and stealing, things of that nature. Nothing really hideously terrible.
Okay. Were there any cases that you remember particularly?
No, I don't think I'd be free to talk about them.
Okay.
Right.
I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So part of this project is we were given 4 questions
Alright.
that we're asked that we're asked to answer by the end of the project. And one of them was, how does war affect the individual?
All right, so they were gone. I never saw those guys again. That was the end of it. But the guys, they were on the base, it was headquarters squadron, the same squadron I was in, we did things together. We'd take liberty together, and we'd go maybe to the swap shoot and have a beer or two together and talk. And basically like what we do now, just tell them about our family and stuff like that. So you got to know them quite well. Plus, since they're the Marine, they had to be okay. So that made it, you know, good camaraderie there.
Okay.
Is that what you wanted?
Yeah. Well, did you see any other effects on, well, I guess how the war, did you see any cases of, you know, soldiers coming back from fighting and having changed a lot?
No,
or not?
I did not,
Okay.
because where I was stationed, this didn't happen much. You didn't have a whole division come back from the Pacific, because these guys are on an aircraft carrier, most of them, and it just wasn't the same.
Yeah.
You know, they'd be in a single engine airplane, maybe 2 guys in a plane, and a squadron would be 20, and that's not that many you'd see at a time. And if a plane has a problem, it wrecks, and there isn't much left to talk about. And whereas a guy can get shot and still be able to walk and talk. If you have a problem in an airplane, it's pretty final.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, let's see. Oh gosh, there was another question I'd had, but I just sort of lost it.
How was Miramar different from your boot camp experience?
Miramar?
Yeah.
It was a base, it was a Navy base, Naval Air Base, and we were there to do specific things that the Navy didn't have enough manpower to do to close it down. That's basically what it was.
Let's see, would you mind, because we missed a lot of that and we would love to record it, do you mind if we go over some of the questions again?
No, not at all.
Okay, that would be great. I think one thing that I wanted to sort of ask again is sort of what you were exposed to in terms of, you know, your perceptions of what you thought of the Japanese and the Germans. But Nick is, yeah.
I never met a Japanese person. They didn't, in the Midwest where I was raised, there were no minorities. There was all Swedes, Irish, and English people in the town. That's all that was there. There were no minorities. So I never met a Japanese person. I never met any Oriental. We had one black fellow, Lefty Bunton, who was a very, very nice kid. That's the only black person I ever knew. So I was, you know, very protected as a young boy in high school.
I was very sheltered inside.
Maybe not, but maybe I missed out. I don't know.
You mentioned about the TV and the movies, how they would show and try to portray the Germans and the Japanese as being awful people.
Oh yeah, yeah. Everybody, that's what you saw.
Yeah.
If you went to a movie, you saw that.
Yeah. Did many people believe that?
I think a lot of people did, yeah. Yeah. I think it was good.
Let's see, where were we? I think we wanted to ask you some about your experience after the service. So, okay, we had somewhere, you got out of the service at, we have the year written down somewhere.
February 48, I think.
Okay.
Let me think.
I think that was right.
Yeah, I think that's right.
48.
Yeah. And you said you went back to the university, and you went to a university in Iowa?
Yeah, I went to the University of Iowa.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the one that has the, you know, the teaching, hospital teaching. It's a big law school, all that stuff.
Okay.
And the other was Iowa State College, which is an ag college. And they used to call it the cow college, which was kind of putting them down a bit. But yeah, those are the two major colleges, and I went to the largest and the most, I thought, very good.
And
that's where I worked in the sorority. I lived in the sorority house for a year.
Okay.
Again, that was an interesting experience.
Yeah. And you majored in German?
German and political science, because I thought I'd go into law school. But when I found out that I had to have the language, that's when I got involved in German. And then I was ready to sign up for the law school, and the head of the department said, hey, come on back. We could use you in the German department teaching class 1s, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we could get your tuition free and so forth.
Okay.
I said, and your master's, work on your master's. I said, okay, so that's what I did.
So how long did you stay in Iowa?
4 years. 3, I think, 2 for the masters, and that was it.
Okay. And then where did you go?
Where did I go from there?
Yeah.
Well, I went back to Cherokee for a little bit.
Okay.
And then I went from there to Denver, from Denver to LA, from LA to Tulare County. And in Tulare County, I've been there pretty much all my life.
Okay.
Started out as a teacher, ended up as an administrator on the county level. And that's basically what I did.
Okay. And if you don't mind us asking, you married?
Yeah.
When?
I am married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have 5 children. It's better to have children if you're married.
Yeah,
That's
that's
true.
generally the case.
So when did you marry? Was it out of university or?
No, we met in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Yeah, we've only been married 50-some years.
Only 50. We should ask the driving questions.
Okay.
Or
My driver's license?
the driving questions to our project.
Yeah. Sort of the main questions that we're trying to answer.
Okay.
With the project.
We'd like your opinion on them, if you could.
Yeah. Let me find them. So we asked you the first one about how, what sort of impact war had on the individual. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that?
About the war?
About how you saw, if you saw any way in which the war changed soldiers. Did you have anything to add?
I'm sure that it did, but I didn't have much contact with the normal soldiers.
Okay.
It was a little bit different environment, I think,
Yeah.
than the normal soldiers.
Okay. And what about, how would you say war affects society? Do you have anything sort of to say to that?
War affects society.
Yeah.
I've never really thought about it. I'm sure it has a tremendous effect. I know it does on families.
Yeah.
And this Sullivan family back in Iowa lost 5 sons, and it just devastated them. And that's when the law was changed that you couldn't send all your sons. You had a limited number of sons that could go into the service during the war. But things like that, you were in the newspapers, and TV wasn't what it is now. I mean, it was Captain Courageous or some stuff. There wasn't much. They hadn't have a large selection of programs to choose from. What was the question? Give me. I'm done.
It was just how does war affect society?
I don't know.
Okay.
Except, the tremendous support. I know that. It was a tremendous support in this country. They had war bond sales. Everybody bought war bonds. And all the big name entertainers got together and put on programs for the war, to help the war. I had a USO. I went to them a couple of times, and they treated you very, very nicely there.
Okay.
And if you couldn't find a place to stay, they always had extra rooms there. You could spend the night.
Okay.
So, there's just so much, so much.
So in some ways the war sort of served to unify the country?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
A lot better than it is right now, I think.
We need another war.
Well, I don't, it's a different war.
Yeah, it's not.
I mean, war could be total wipeout for the whole world right now. Whereas that was not the concern there.
Yeah.
Excuse
That's
me,
true.
I digress.
Oh, no, that's actually great. Do you have more to say particularly on how war has changed at all? And how you see
Yeah,
it? Okay.
certainly it's changed. It's more, the Marines are still do basically the same thing, but so much now is done by a drone will be up above you and just, you're gone. I mean, never heard of a drone plane in those days. It was unheard of. So there's so many advances in terms of certain things that we can do that we couldn't even think of doing now. But the bad part is a lot of the countries that we don't think highly of have the same ability to do that.
Yeah.
And the worst part, of course, after Truman said bomb Japan, it saved many lives because the war ended, basically. But on the other hand, it opened a door to all these other countries, and they say, my God, what a weapon. We can conquer the world with this weapon. And a lot of them have tried, not yet successful, but I think they still think it would be a nice thing to do for their country, to destroy the rest of the countries. And that's the bad part of the current thing. They hated the Japanese because they were so bloodthirsty and
Yeah.
And the Germans are always, well, what would they say? They have all these hats and they're always and they're always saying something. So they try to develop an antagonism, at least for the Germans and the Japanese. And the worst part of it, when Franklin Roosevelt took all the Japanese citizens, they're American citizens, and put them in internment camps. I think that was probably the worst thing that we could have ever done to other people. Mainly because the greed in Americans came through. If these Japanese had beautiful orchards and they were interned, they'd get them for nothing. So they were profiting by this. And I'm surprised when the Japanese got turned loose, when they finally decided it was a mistake. They started all over again. A lot of them went back to Japan, but most of them had no antagonism towards the United States. And I think that's one of the better things to know. But I really resent what they did to those people. But nobody did anything about it.
I think
I resent it so much that I didn't do anything, There should have been more action on the citizens.
I think relatively recently the government did hand out money to the people who'd been interned, but it was, most of them are gone by now.
Yeah,
so.
and the families were, the families are disrupted totally. And hats off to what they did living in those camps. I don't know. Knowing that what they worked hard for was no longer there.
And I was reading about the internment camps the other day, and it noted that there weren't very many fights, and the Japanese did not particularly resist. So, I think the last question that that they want us to answer is: with war, can war, with all of its destruction, be beneficial in any way?
Can repeat?
Can war be beneficial? Even war, obviously, it takes so many lives and it destroys
I don't know.
a lot of space.
I don't think anybody knows, do they?
Well, do you
I think
have
that's a question that nobody could really answer.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to answer.
And I sure can't, because I'm not that worldly known.
Yeah, well, I
read a lot, but I don't speak out a great deal because it's sort of a waste of time for me.
War or just trying to answer the question?
About it, doing anything about it.
Yeah.
My health isn't what it used to be, and I don't have the vigor I used to have.
Well, there's certainly no. Well, I don't think there's any right answer to the question. Do you have?
I don't think so either.
Yeah. In your experiences, from what you've heard, from what you read, do you have any opinion on that? Whether you think war ever can be beneficial, or do you really just?
I can't speak one way or the other because I can't tell. I know everybody in this country was for World War II. They supported it all the way. And I don't know, I don't think we have the support now that we used to have. And I don't know why. But I don't think it's because of World War II. I don't think it's a result of the war. There's something else that's happening that I'm not aware of what it is. But
well, I think the situations that and the events that started the wars are somewhere.
Well, the Japanese, they bombed Pearl Harbor. That started the war. That basically started the war.
Yeah.
We were helping England at that time, shipping stuff over, and.
Yeah, but we weren't directly involved in combat.
No, we didn't have any pilots up in the air at that time. We just had big Liberty ships taking stuff over. So they could survive against the Germans, because the Germans were just about ready to go across the English Channel and take England. In fact, Hitler made so many stupid mistakes that he just wasn't a good warrior as such, I didn't think.
Okay.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to this, or?
No, I would like to add I enjoyed being here.
Okay. Well, thank you.
And I don't get an audience who listens to me often, so that's been a pleasure. And I do have a tendency to ramble on a little bit. And,
that's exactly what we came for.
Okay. So anyhow, I know I've enjoyed being here, and it's nice to talk to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
If I can say guys.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine.
I mean the majority, but guys and gals.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.